This is about hip hop. It's about music. How are you doing tonight? Awesome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so very much for joining us. Please, please give a round of applause for our DJ, DJ 007. Got to give the DJ some. Well, welcome to Message in the Music. It is about Black music as the soundtrack to inspire or incite. I'm Tiffany Bacon. I'm going to be your moderator this evening, and I welcome you into our house hour, as in WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media. 20 years strong, y'all. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year, and if you are not a member, this is one of the reasons why I want you to consider being a member of WURD, because we bring you events like this. We bring you programming like this, educational, entertaining, inspirational. We are so grateful to be in this space tonight. And before we get into the conversation, because I want you to meet our amazing panelists, and we're going to have a great conversation that you can be a part of as well. I'll share that with you in a second. But we want to say thank you to our sponsors for making it happen. Our sponsors include WXP and Artists to Watch, the Black Opry Residency. Thank you to them. Also to Comcast, Pico, Keystone First as well. So can we give a hand clap for all the sponsors making this happen? It is time to get into this conversation. We all know about hip-hop. We got a lot to say about hip-hop. Everybody up here loves hip-hop. So we're going to hear this panelist's thoughts and you as well in the midst of this conversation. I want to introduce you to our panelists today. First up, we have a FemC joining us, who is half of the music group still. Half of the music group. Funk, I am my own. Okay, there you go. She is a FemC, super fabulous, and doing her thing. And she is representing hip hop on this stage today. Put your hands together for Queen Joe.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Up next, his loving parents allowed him to use his bedroom as a canvas to prevent him from getting in trouble. And in the 2000s, this next panelist became a father and joined the workforce, and on the weekends would reconnect with the art of the hip-hop scene. He began exhibiting his art nationwide in 2012, and he is a serious hip-hop head and here to represent not just hip-hop, the music, but the culture as well. Christian Tame Arts Rodriguez is our next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You hear this next panelist on WURD, and he has dedicated his life to uplifting a new generation of young people to help unlock the transformative power of education and recognize the potential of investing in one's own personal growth. He is presently an assistant professor of instruction in the Department of Africology and African American Studies, my alma mater, Temple University. Please put your hands together for Dr. Aaron Smith. Hey, y'all, what's good? We up here tonight. Yes. Okay. Our next panelist burst onto the scene earlier this year. The music industry insiders describe him as soulful R&B with a hint of trap. Straight A student and star b-ball player in high school, hailing from Chocolate City, D.C. He is also going to perform for us this evening. Please put your hands together for Tylan.
Thank y'all for having me, man. Happy to be here.
Next to my left, but always right, an interdisciplinary poet, performer, recording artist whose work reflects on personal history, family, and all things delicious. She is a super sister, and if you don't know your work, you're going to find out about it today. Please put your hands together for my friend, Ursula Rucker.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany. I love you.
And last but not least, one of the architects of Black Music Month, which is the month that we are in right now, a trailblazer in broadcasting, dubbed by the New York Times as hip-hop artist whisperer, celebrity clientele, off the charts. She is a mentor. She is a mother. She is an icon in broadcasting. She is Dyana Williams.
Yay!
I welcome everybody to the panel. Let's get into it. So, it's the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I'm going to kind of beat Jack a question from the movie Brown Sugar. When did each of you first experience hip hop? I'll start with Ursula and we'll go down the line.
Okay. I don't know really. That's how long. So all I know is I had all Sugar Hill's albums in my room. So if that's a proper answer, I think it is. If I had all Sugar Hill's albums playing on my Emerson, my white Emerson turntable, I don't need to tell you what year I'm from or whatever. Look it up. You know what I'm saying? But it starts there. Oh, and Lady B.
Yeah.
All right.
Lady B.
So Lady B like really helped me and it helped all of us like come to our hip hop selves and embrace it as a voice for ourselves, a representation of us, a place where we could feel like we could tell our stories. Our stories were similar to these stories. We're like, oh, okay, cool. So like, yeah, Black Pen.
I love it. Thank you. Queen Joe, same question.
Wow. So I would say that I was introduced to hip hop through my father. He was a street dude. So we always listened to hip hop, but I would say that what made me fall in love with hip hop had to be Queen Latifah's UNITY, and then also Lil Kim Crush on You. And I'm gonna tell you, when you're a kid, even when you're listening to things that may or may not be inappropriate, you can at least feel the energy of what they bring. And I was a tomboy growing up, so all the boys had everybody. I'm gonna be like this person, I'm gonna be like that person, this, that, and other. So to have women just come out and just speak so unapologetically about whatever it was, I just felt like they were representing me, and I was happy to quote them, no matter how appropriate or inappropriate it was. And yeah, that's what made me fall in love with hip hop.
Love it. Thank you. All right, Tylan, up next.
So obviously I'm the baby out of the group. So oh man. But no, I would say I fell in love with hip hop. Obviously growing up, that's the biggest genre in the world right now. So growing up riding with my mom, sometimes with my dad, I would listen to like, Biggie, Tupac, and just listening to their delivery and what they would be talking about. And Tupac particularly, because he was just so multifaceted, he could do everything. That guy wrote, spoke so eloquently. What else? He could act. So like just seeing those guys and listening to that type of music, like it really impacted me a lot in the genre, because I always say R&B and hip hop are like cousins. So like I listen to a lot of hip hop music to get inspiration from, to add to my music, to my career.
Fantastic. Thank you for mentioning hip hop. Thank you for mentioning Tupac. Today is Tupac's birthday.
Oh man.
That's the way. For those who did not know, today is Tupac's birthday. Dyana Williams.
Yes, Tiffany Bacon.
When did you first experience hip hop?
Well, first, I want to say good grand evening to you and to all our esteemed guests. Thank you so much for showing up and out for WURD. Shout out to Sarah Lomax, the Lomax family. We are celebrating 20 years of progressive Black talk media in Pennsylvania and globally, because we stream all over the world. I just had to give that little shout out.
Thank you.
And what a distinguished honor to be here with my fellow panelists. I grew up in the Boogie Down Bronx, but my early recollections would have to be when I was living in Harlem as a teenager and I heard The Last Poets for the first time. We cannot disregard the connection between poetry and the griots in our community. And then, of course, it was, I heard Nikki Giovanni and all her beautiful poetry. Ursula, I know you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, Nikki Giovanni, if you've never heard Ego Tripping, don't tell me that it's not hip hop, that it's not rap, because it in fact is. And then much like Ursula, what totally turned me out was hearing The Message, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, which I think is, in the very early infancy of what we then called rap, and then it evolved into being called hip hop, and then numerous subgenres that have come from it. So yeah, those are my beginners.
Awesome. Thank you.
Tame.
So fun fact, The Message is my favorite song. For me, I would say it would have to be a time between 84 and 86 by an MC Ceja in Puerto Rico, actually. He was from the middle of the island, and he was originally from the Bronx or went to Puerto Rico. He's kind of like the godfather of like true hip hop in Puerto Rico. So that was the first thing that captivated me, like to the culture, and then seeing the B-boys. That's, for those of you guys that don't know me, that's kind of like the world that I'm known the most in. And that just understanding the lineage of Puerto Ricans and Blacks coming out of the Bronx together and coming up within the culture of breaking, it was just something super captivating because I realized I saw myself within it.
Good stuff. Thank you, Tame. Last but not least, Dr. Aaron Smith.
First experience, right?
Yeah.
It was a Sugar Hill Gang on the radio. I think it was after, what's that song? Whip it, let it whip it, baby. And then after that, they played the Sugar Hill Gang, and I was like, we made it. I didn't know it was going to be a bumpy road. I thought it was going to be like a linear progression, and everybody was going to accept us. I was young at the time, but I remember thinking that we had arrived. We were pushed to the periphery of society. And I remember that movie, Fort Apache, the Bronx, and just the way that we were left for dead, that benign neglect had taken root, in full swing. And we were not expected not only to be creative or to influence international culture, we were expected not even participate, in society at that point. We were expected to be nothing and do nothing, and to have our creativity not only change our condition, but to change the world. It was so powerful to be one of those people who saw it happening. As everybody said, it was a passing fad. So it was just so meaningful for us to infiltrate the airwaves and then, be like a precursor to us infiltrating all aspects of society around the world. I saw that new, the football, they do the shake now, and then the 20 year, the new edition of the football game. And I was thinking these young African-Americans and Latinos have consistently created the trends that influence the entire world. I can't name you one dance that I've done ever in my life that came from Switzerland or Afghanistan or nothing, but I can name you like 5 from Philly right now. You know what I'm saying? Like I could do that. So I remember the Sugar Hill Gang and The Message in particular, because I remember us having a voice and a soundtrack to our lives. And before that, it was always just, you don't know nothing about music. They kept saying it, but we had our music up too loud to listen after hip hop came.
Thank you all. Yes, please give them a round of applause for that. Thank you all for saying that, especially Dr. Aaron Smith. Thank you for saying that, because I too my first experience was hip hop. With hip hop was the Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. I grew up in North, 24th of Ridge, Judson Street, and my neighbor DeeJay came down the street with a Sound of Market bag under his arm, and he said, "You want to hear a new record?" And so went to his house, and he played Rapper's Delight, and that was it. And within an hour, I knew all the words and went to school singing all the words. And all of the elders started saying, "You know all that hibbity hip hop stuff, but you don't know your arithmetic." So let's just talk about how the music and the culture were discounted continuously until maybe recently. Tell us from your perspective, what is hip hop culture? And I'll start with Dr. Aaron.
No, I think it's just that for me, it's the self-determination of people that, like I said earlier, were left for dead. I don't think we've even had that conversation yet. It's almost like when you do something good and everybody looks to you and says, "I knew you could make it." And you're like, "No, you didn't. I remember you hating." That's how I feel sometimes, when it's like a real kumbaya moment. Part of me be like battle rap with it, like you wasn't, shooting in the gym. Like you wasn't with me. Yeah, now I'm hot, go home, and they caught the vapors, right? So they wasn't shooting in the gym. So now everybody's like, "Oh, hip hop," and I'm like, "Word." Like 90% of y'all was like, this is gonna end, get a job. I remember Wild Style and Beat Street, right? And Nas in the beginning of Illmatic uses that part from Wild Style, you're on a metal doing this. You get a job, be a man, right? I am doing this, right? So I really think that hip hop has given so many people an understanding of the reality of history in terms of African innovation. Because history tells it like starting in Greece and then everybody's trickling down. But the reality of history is Africans first, then everybody else. And hip hop has like reasserted history and put its proper balance as in terms of who starts things and who follows. Because before that, they were trying to give us all kind of Superman and Days of Our Lives and all this other stuff, which is fine. But, when I learned that most of these things were copies, of African creativity, I really appreciate the fact that hip hop in particular makes sure that there's a protection of the culture. And KRS-One, most notably, has predicted, will be the old school artist, and people still take your rapping for a joke, a passing hope, right? So he knew then what they were saying and what it was going to be, to the point where he constructed, I think, a cultural foundation that a lot of people still refer to, even if they're not fans of his music, that they borrow from that template in terms of invited to the cookout for the culture. A lot of that, I think, started with KRS-One being able to see the big picture and cast that vision.
Tame.
So for me, the culture of hip hop is an embodiment of 4 different elements. That's the writing element. I say writing, and we all know it as graffiti. And writing started here in the city of Philadelphia. So that it actually comes before the name hip hop. Hip hop came around 83, 84 by Cowboy, actually, from Grandmaster Flash. During that time, the 4 elements was writing, graffiti, MCing, DJing, and b-boying. Also, during that early time, there was beatboxing. There was also the 5th element. I saw the individual here telling me 5. Later on, Africa Bambaataa, who was the one that basically said these are the elements. Later on, he dropped beatboxing and named it the 4 elements of hip hop. So yes, I agree. There's 5, but due to one of the fathers, he dropped it down and named it 4. And then the 5th, that's when Islam came into, the culture as well, and they named the 5th the knowledge of self. So that's what beatboxing was replaced by. But yeah, that's what hip hop culture is to me.
Awesome. Thank you for the breakdown. Dyana, any thoughts?
Well, again, it's an articulation of a people and the innovation of a people. And it is rooted in the tradition of the griots in Africa, telling the stories, perpetuating the information in the community of the beeps, of the girl they liked. I mean, I think of LL Cool J when I think of the romantic part of hip hop. And then we have, of course, as I said, the subgenres within the genre, because you've got the gangster rap, and now you have trill, right? What's trill? That's okay. That just checking. I want to make sure that I'm staying current. But you have all these mixed. And then how about one of my favorites, which caught a lot of people off guard, was the merger. You had DJ Guru and you had DJ Premier, and the merging of hip hop, jazz, and R&B, those mixed genres. And Ursula can talk definitely more about that. Our good friend King Britt was melding the genres a good long time ago with the Diggable Planets, and even before then and since. You've got Afrofuturism. There's so many different variations. So for me, it is just the evolution of yet another magnificent art form indigenous to this country, rooted from Africa.
What?
Man,
Thank you.
before I even get my answer, I just want to say I appreciate all of y'all. Y'all teaching me a lot right now. It's about, everything. So, man, that's a lot right there, and I just appreciate that. For me, I think it's just the culture, like just the way that we speak, the way that we dress, the way that we carry ourselves. Like that's, for me and my generation, that's what hip hop like represents. A lot of like the slang and stuff. And what I realized is that a lot of this stuff is recycled. When you bring up like the origin of hip hop, like a lot of the stuff that we're saying now, like we got it from the OGs, like the Grandmaster Flash, the LL Cool J's of the world. So like, you know, got it all from y'all.
You speak real good, young man. You speak real good. Queen Joe.
Okay. So for me, hip hop is an artistic expression for those marginalized by respectability politics. And for me, that and that obviously goes beyond music, right? That's like he said, the culture, the way you dress, in whatever way you might express yourself. But it really is like that thing that's like, I am here. You are going to recognize me. I will not be bullied, regardless of what genre you come from. And I think that that's really important to a lot of Black and brown people because we are the most marginalized by respectability politics. And every now and again, you know, when you're in those situations, even when you feel like you can't do anything systematically to change it, you can at least yell it and shout it from the rooftops in some sort of way. And I think that's what hip hop is to me.
Awesome. Thank you. Last but not least, Ursula.
Thank you. Thanks for everything everyone said. Amazing and so honored to be up here. That goes without saying, but I'll say it because it should be said. If that makes any sense, what I just said. We're from Philly. Figure it out. Yeah, the culture thing. Thank you, because that's my favorite thing. Is a way of life. Is that people forget that culture is a way of life. A culture is a way of life. A culture is a way of life. It's not a genre of music. It's not just a genre of music. For us, this is like, you know, when I was 14 and I had a spinal fusion for scoliosis and I was in Shriners Hospital for 3.5 months. My mom bought my boombox every Saturday so I could listen to Lady B's show. It kept me alive. It's my culture. It's a savior. It's a place where we could put our stories, a place where we could tell all our real shit. When we can't say our real shit anywhere else, then we could, like, you know, put it in a, like, Wu-Tang song. Like, you put on Wu-Tang, come on. Are we done? Like, we're done.
I love it. I love all of that. If you're just tuning in, by the way, we are recording this to be played back on air. Meant to mention that beforehand. It's all good. It's all good. We're going to play this back on air. It's not live. We will play it back later. But thank you for all of that energy. This next question goes to anyone on the panel, so feel free to jump in. I want to start doing a deep dive into the messaging. This is a quote from The Guardian. People have been arguing over hip hop ever since it started in New York in the 1970s. It was soon the most controversial genre in the country. Many listeners feel that the genre should be more politically aware, revolutionary, or just plain conscious. Do you, panel, believe that the genre has a responsibility to be conscious and an obligation to teach?
Absolutely, but there's different ways to teach. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We are not monolithic as a people. So when I was rattling off different genres of hip-hop, from gangster rap to drill, I keep saying, I want to say trill, that, you know, there are variations on the theme. There are 8 billion people currently on this planet as we are moving around the sun. No one person is the same from the other. We have commonalities, but it's our differences that make this more interesting to me. And the reality is that you do have what some people term as conscious rap. So that would be like the Tribe Called Quest and even Rakim, Eric B., and Tupac, as we celebrate his birthday today. He had a lot of consciousness and political accuracy and insight in his rhymes. He did a spectrum. He could go from super ratchet to high level intellectualism. So we are not one thing, and no genre has an obligation to do just one thing. So we're different. We all have different tastes. I know some people who can't stand conscious music. They don't like it. They want ratchet. And guess what? They have a right to have what they like and want. There's a market. There's a group of people that's their niche. So I say different strokes with different folks, right? Ooh, sha, isn't that what Line the Family Stone said? We got to live together.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Anyone else on the panel? Yes, please give it up for Dyana. Anyone else want to just jump in on thoughts on that? I just want to piggyback off what she said, because I agree with what she said completely. But I also want to talk about what the word obligation means. And that's just because with anybody else, it's so interesting, but with anybody else, sometimes we just don't have the luxury to just be and just create. Sometimes we don't. Like and that's not like a lot of art forms. And I do feel like there should be elements where you are teaching people what there is conscious, because it's necessary for our survival. But I think from an artist standpoint as well, I should be free to create the same type of music that everybody else is free to create. I think that, so when I think about obligation, it's I don't know, it's such like a heavy thing, right? Because like we all want to just, go to work and do our jobs and have fun. But then you also know, all right, there are certain things that you specifically have to do, and you have to raise people up, and you have to do all these other things. As a people, it's something that we do and that I do gladly, but it's just like the obligation of it sometimes is very heavy when you're an artist, because, everybody has a different message. Like she said, it can take different forms, right? Like you can look at somebody like Mos Def and be like, okay, that's a conscious rapper, right? And then I could look at somebody completely different that you might not think is a conscious rapper, but is a conscious rapper to me and what I'm going through and the way that I'm going through it. So I love that she said it the way that she said it, because it felt freer, if that makes any sense. Okay. Awesome. Tame, you look like you have something to say.
Don't throw me in there. No, I would piggyback as well, just because I do feel that the older we get, sometimes I've noticed that older generations look down on the younger generations. What we have to understand is the same way they look down on us when we were coming up. And as you mentioned earlier, like nobody believed in this. And now you have so many subgenres within the culture. And understand this, like our culture was created out of nothing. Out of nothing. Just the innovation of Black and brown. And that is the most powerful thing. So when we talk about conscious music, I feel like if you pay attention to all the generations in the music of hip-hop, each generation has spoken to the truths of those times. So all we have to do is listen.
Yeah, the question is, Tiffany, why is it the number one genre in the world? Why do people in France relate to hip-hop? Why do people in Japan relate to hip-hop? Why do people in Brazil understand the feeling and the intention of the music? Because guess what? They got hoods in all those places, and they're struggling in all those places, and they fall in love in all those places, and they have lust in all those places. They're basic human elements and qualities to American hip-hop that have now permeated global culture in a way that is intrinsic, vital, super real, because they're dealing with the realities of being human beings, trying to navigate this thing we call life. The struggles are all very similar.
With so much truth, I just have to have a follow-up to that. With so much truth in the music, why does it seem to be so divisive for some? Hip-hop.
Well, I'd like to start making one clarification, because earlier I said they didn't believe in us. But God did. I'm just kidding. I think it's important. to contextualize things historically. when I think about the genre being described as a problem, I think back to Du Bois when he was talking about what does it feel like to be a problem and the Negro problem. I always say you can't prune a problem. You got to get to the root of it. The problem ain't the music. That's like Serena Williams, being talked down to because she wore a cat suit covering 60% of her body, but the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders can go out there looking like they're modeling for Victoria's Secrets. If I told you to go out there and I'm objectifying you or controlling your image, then it's fine for you to wear next to nothing. But if you decided what you're going to wear and you're taking agency and control of your own narrative, now it's an issue. So the issue's not clothes. The issue's not music. Oftentimes they try to do this little shell game on us, like the 3-card mind. No. If you were in control of the music completely and you were making all the money off the music and you created it first, and it influenced your kids do what you wanted them to do, and they thought that y'all was the sex symbols and the culture leaders, you wouldn't have a problem with Nay's song. That's why when Vanilla Ice first dropped, he sold more than every rapper that was ever out, and that's why Eminem outsold them all. It's not the music that's the issue. I think we need to really clarify and look through some of these smoke screens, because when you look at it that way, you say, wow, in COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI, when the US organization went against the Black Panther Party for self-defense, was instigated to do so, and people lost their lives accordingly. When you look at the documentation, it said that the program or the plan was to create an East Coast, West Coast war. The first time I read that, Biggie and Pac had been dead for over a decade. I said, wait, they did this before? And they called it the exact same thing, but we're so away from the realities of history. Asa Hilliard said our brains are like supercomputers. The more we understand history, the more we have memory like a computer, the more able we are to process information, to engage phenomena to our benefit, and even predict future events. So if you knew it happened before, when you saw that Vibe magazine cover that said East versus West, you say, oh, no, not again. But us being detached from history, we said, oh, man, this is going to be on. So I think it's really critical for us to contextualize hip-hop appropriately so it's not used against us. So we don't see Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, but we start to see Grace and Lucien, and we start to see Jimmy Iovine, and we start to see the people who are really controlling the narrative and controlling the music. Because we're blaming the puppet. And Malcolm said, I don't blame the puppet. I blame the puppeteer.
Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in on that? I think you said it all. We can. That's the whole point of this conversation. Let's go where we don't normally get to go. Let's lay it out on the table, because what's happening is, and I'm going to be honest, I've been a part of it with the stuff that I don't like, and I'm like, oh, it hurts my ears. Why is this? Why is that? And I find myself falling into traps. Pun intended. Falling into traps. And I have to ask myself why. I know why I like what I like. I know what speaks to me. And when someone once asked me why I don't like a certain type of music or a certain artist or a certain song, the best answer I've been able to give is something in it feels dark. So there's a spiritual connection I have to certain songs, but not a genre of music. And that's where I push back. You cannot lump all of these negative feelings or negative whatevers into a whole genre. Like Dyana said, we are not a monolith, not the people, not the art of the people. So I'm constantly checking myself when I fall into these traps. When I say I don't like trap music, I check myself like, what is it that I am not connecting with? And is it okay that I don't? And it is. Right. It is perfectly okay that I don't connect with it, but I shouldn't necessarily condemn it or condemn the whole genre behind it.
I also think that generationally, and that's okay. I feel like I'm gonna be crucified for this. That's okay.
No crucifixion.
I feel like, and it's funny because I have this conversation with my parents all the time. I feel like what happens is you have generations of people who've had it so hard, right? And then the next generation comes in and builds on that, and it's less hard. And then the next generation builds in, and it's less hard. And then the next generation, and then it's less hard. And so what ends up happening is you have people who are gatekeeping unintentionally. And they're not gatekeeping because they're hating on you because you're young, right? You don't have to relate to something to think that it's bad or good. You might just not relate, and that's okay. But the conversation starts to get really interesting when you have
like, for example, right? When I think of who would be in my class, when I'm talking about music anyway, when I think about who in hip hop or rap would be in my class, I would think it would be like, your Kendrick Lamar's, your J. Cole's, your like that is the people that I would say is the top of quote unquote my class. They're very lyrical, right? They're here with the punchlines, the double entendres. It's a way, right? But then you have newer artists where the lyrics just a lot lighter. They might be where people might say that they lack in lyrical ability. I don't even know if that's a word. They make up for it in different ways, whether that's musicality, whether there's all these things. And when you think about the doors or how hard it was for certain people to get into spaces back then versus what it looks like easier now because it's more of a global market. You know what I mean? It just seems like, I think people think when you get things easily, you don't appreciate it. And a lot of times that is true, but not all the time. But I think it's that disconnection that starts to make people like pick apart like specific things between each genre. Like I've seen somebody from a younger generation talk about older rappers and be like, you were like in the park at the dark, do 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 do. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but also just like, no, because you had to be there at that time. You had to understand that, again, they had their own version of what musicality looked like, what that lyrics meant then. Matter of fact, the fact that you could do the lyrics that you could do now is because you built on the lyrics that they did then. And I think that every other genre is allowed to age gracefully, but because for whatever reason, hip hop isn't allowed to age gracefully, you have this very weird generational conflict. I'm not going to call it a war because I think everybody loves everybody, but you just have this conflict, and it's because we're not like relating or talking to each other on that level and realizing that connectivity.
All right. Thank you for that. Ursula. Yes, give her a round of applause.
I really don't know what to say. It's a lot. It's a lot of emotion. All I know is hip hop is a movement, and I will once again say it's a culture. It's big for me. I will once again say it's a way of life. So if you put that right after it, and I think that's kind of impactful. It's a way of life. What's your way of life? I call myself a child of hip hop. I'm firm on that. I'm solid on that. I'm a child of house music too, though. Talk to me about that later. All right,
Talk about it now.
Right.
You don't have to wait till later.
Yeah, it's like, it's just it's a culture. It's like this is stuff that really, really saves. So if you're gonna talk about contention and divisiveness in a music form that's not really a music form, that's a culture. Like you talk about why is it so divisive in a culture, in a movement, in a culture and a movement where shit is so sorry. Ursula, please do better. This is not your album, sis.
It's just an ass.
So,
It's 2023. Sorry, let's do better. Let's all do better.
let's all do. Let's let us say some stuff. If we're talking about hip hop, it was when we got the chance to, know that there were things that could be said that we didn't know that could be said about our lives, about how we were living, about how we were surviving or not surviving, letting people have a glimpse into our like unique situation that's like unique because like people don't want to give mutual aid and compassion to Black, Latino, indigenous folks. Where's the compassion? Learn the history, learn all the greatness, get it together, know thyself. As an indigenous person, know thyself. Because contention and divisiveness is always available when you don't know yourself. And so hip hop helps us know ourselves. I mean, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
With that, I appreciate you. With that, I'm going to switch to a quote of Chuck D. Chuck D, Public Enemy, once said, "Rap is Black America's CNN." What's being reported on the community today?
The report hasn't changed from when Chuck D first came out as an artist with Public Enemy. It's the same story. In fact, it's magnified. There's still lots of drugs in our communities. There's still an enormous amount of violence, more guns than ever before. You know, I graduated from high school in Manhattan in 1971, and my number one album, I get asked all the time, my number one album of all time is its relevancy through time, and that is Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, released the year that I graduated from high school. But the reality, if you listen to the lyrics of that, all the songs on that album, it's still happening. Now, then it was the Vietnam War, but now we still have a war going on. And we have wars going on in our very communities. These are not wars that are just being fought overseas. I saw a story on the news today that hospitals are being ransomware. They're being held by a Russian entity. Did any of you see that on the news? Defense Department. They're being held hostage because of cyber attacks. There is war going on right here in our country. We are fighting nonstop. So the stories remain the same. And even what your generation is singing and in the younger generation, I respect the voices of this generation, because one of the problems that sometimes elders make is the looking down and I don't understand. But there was music that your parents didn't understand and their parents before them. And the reality is you survived and you raised your family and your values are different. And as you get older, sometimes you become more conservative. But the reality of why hip hop is the number one selling and most popular genre around the world is because it's resonating, like I said earlier. There's crime in Indonesia. There's crime in Africa. There's crime in China. There's crime everywhere, some places less than others. And hip hop artists are not just singing about crime. You know, when I think about this cultural mecca that we live in, that we are in at this moment, Philadelphia, just the hip hop genre, so many, the first Grammy went to Will Smith and DJ Jazzy Jeff, who is a master turntablist, another part of hip hop. You had some of the great female MCs come from this city. One of the first one, Lady B, Bahamadia, Eve, who just performed at the Roots Picnic. The list is long. And here, the Roots, the actual first musical band doing hip hop, we take them for granted because they're from here, but they're ours. And they're seen on TV by millions of people every night, perpetuating hip hop and the feeling and the vibe of, as Ursula said, the culture. So we have a lot to be proud of. You know, Beanie Siegel, Freeway, one of my beloveds who was taken away from us, PNB Rock, Meek Mill. The list is long. We are still producing innovation and creativity through the young people and the elders that remain, the 3 times dope, the Robert ESTs. They're still living amongst us in our community. Schoolie D. We need to be lifting and celebrating, not just during the 50th anniversary of hip hop, but continuously. We should not be taking our people for granted. We should be elevating and celebrating. That's what they do in Europe. In Europe, a friend of mine just came back and they were like, oh my goodness, Europeans know every word to every song. They know where the album was recorded, who the engineer was. They know the dates. We used to do that. I know my generation, we used to do that. We need to bring back liner notes and information so that people can absorb and appreciate even more the contributions of these definitively artistic individuals.
Love it.
I want to add a little bit and a few more names to that list that I think are just incredible pioneers and individuals within the culture. Currently, we have Box One, who's a b-boy out of West Philly, one of the top 10 b-boys in the world from the city of Philadelphia, African-American too. We have b-boy Wine now, who was originally from Jersey, but, basically got his whole style out of Philly.
and he's top 3, icon in the b-boy world around the world. We have also, you mentioned Jazzy Jeff, and everybody knows with the Transformers, we can't forget about DJ Cash Money too, who was there as well. And both of them incorporated that wagga wagga sound that sounds like the Transformers that came out of Philadelphia. So it's important to understand lineage, history, and we understand where we're at now.
So true. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Can we dive a little bit more into Philadelphia's contribution to hip hop? Because I know we're talking about the 50th anniversary, born in New York, but down 95 a little piece. There's a little Keystone State that makes a lot of noise. Can someone just share with all of us the importance of the Philadelphia voice in the hip hop compendium?
Well, let's start with your voice. Because you, other than Lady B, Tiffany Bacon held us down and introduced us. Yeah, real talk. We have to recognize one of the pioneers of the genre as a female who was documenting her stories and his stories. And you definitively have been that voice for us in this community for decades. How many decades?
3.
How many?
3+.
3+ decades. Okay, yes, you've been informing and perpetuating. That's why I said Philadelphia is a music mecca. And so, when we talk about Jazzy Jeff, he's almost like a one-man stop, because from him came the great songwriter producing teams, came Touch of Jazz, the production company that he started. Jill Scott came from there, and Erykah Badu, when she came. Jazzy Jeff and Touch of Jazz was attracting D'Angelo, Common. They all came through here. And while you may want to call what they did neo-soul, they reject that term. They didn't like Kedar Massenberg's term. They are real deal musicians who grew up with hip-hop. Hip-hop is at the core of D'Angelo's music. Funk and hip-hop and soul, of course. Same thing with Common. And they came here, Tiffany. You interviewed them. You talked to all of them. They came through Philadelphia to try to get some of the flavor of Sigma sound, of Touch of Jazz, when we talk about hip-hop, we can't leave out the Black Lily. The Black Lily was a launching pad, if you would, for the great, the cauldron of great creativity that was coming out of Philadelphia with Jaguar Wright, the Jazzy Fat Nasty,
Kindred the
Family Soul, Fatine and Asia, right?
River, the poet River.
There you go. So we are a launching pad, not just for jazz, not just for, the Clark sisters, okay? They came, the gospel, the Dixie Hummingbirds. Name a genre, name it, I don't care. European classical music, we excelled. Marian Anderson came from that world. Name a genre. Philly. So when it comes to hip hop, we for sure were this environment that created this gumbo. When I was thinking about Eve and watching her at the Roots picnic, I was thinking about the Rough Riders, the movements that came out of here, not just Jazzy Jeff and a touch of jazz. So we have a lot to be proud of in Philadelphia. Like I said, we should be using, I am one of the co-founders of June Black Music Month with Kenny Gamble and Ed Wright. And what this month is about, I get asked, why should we celebrate? Well, who does not want to be recognized for their work? Who does not want to be celebrated, especially in their own communities? And it is a month of observance, not to say that we stop the end of June. We continue every single day. Black music, all genres of it, are at the very core of our soundtrack to our lives here in America. Hip-hop being just one of them. So when you think about from the moment you wake up, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, get in your car, or you're at the subway, on the train, on the bus, when you go into the dentist's office, you're in the supermarket, when you're just walking down the street, you hear American music created here in this country. and you hear hip hop, and you hear the blues and jazz, and you hear every imaginative, new collaborative energy that comes from people working together. But so much of it is born right here in the first capital of the United States with the deepest history in America. We should be proud of that.
Can I say something? Thank you, Dyana. That was amazing and beautiful. Of course, I could listen to you forever. I think like as I was listening to everyone, I'm thinking like you can almost forget about yourself when you're an artist and all the things you do, because it's you're doing so much. And if you're doing it with mutual aid, and you're a poet and an artist with and for and by the people, then you're really doing a lot. But one of my very first recordings of being a poet, and not even ever knowing or thinking that I could, be a poet, recording my poetry with music, almost exclusively, to the point where, my friends who put out books, they're constantly at me, have you put out, books yet? I'm like, well, I'm saying, how far behind are you on your albums? So how far behind are you on your albums? I'm saying. We all, like Dyana said, we like, everything is done in different. Everything is open. There are many options. So like, I always love that, options. But anyway, that a poet could go into every kind of music, and this was one of my first recordings with the Roots. That hip hop that could really makes me emotional, and it really makes my eyes fill up with tears to think that in a community of friends and hanging out together, and others getting their thing together, and not knowing how they were going to put themselves out there, that they would invite a poet to come and be on the end of a hip hop album made so much sense to me. I almost couldn't believe it. It was actually happening, you know what I mean? And thank you. And so it happened a few times. If you ever gotten to the end of the Roots, like how you can't go out and pass your card out all the time, right? If you listen to the Roots, that poet at the end, that's me. Because you want to tell, like, you can't, like, that would be like goofy or whatever, but you want to. But why would it be? Because like, that's what I do. That's how I feel. That's how I raise my 4 kids and take care of my 4 sons all this time. But the youngest is going to be 19 on Juneteenth. So yeah, right. And they all do. But I'm saying that was like one of my first recordings ever with poetry. Was hip hop, was house first, and then hip hop. That was my first 2 recordings. Oh wait, 3. House, drum and bass, hip hop, poets. What's up?
Love it.
We're all connected. We're all connected. If you're right, any kind of good song you love, that's poetry. So like, don't forget about the poets in all of this conversation. Okay, because your favorite hip hop song, your favorite song, that's poetry.
Yep. No last talk. I just wanted to add something about Philly too, because I know we were talking about specific Philadelphia. It's very interesting because I didn't even know that they didn't like the term neo soul, but somebody asked me once, was like, what is the sound of Philadelphia? No pun intended, but like, what is the sound? And I was like, if I had to put Philly, I would never say that Philly has a sound. I would call it a filter. And the reason why I say that is because if you live in Philadelphia, you understand that any other sound, whether that's hip hop, whether that's soul, whether that's R&B, whether that's funk, whether that's house, you'll have the Philly approach to it. And I think it's like a filter, and it makes it grittier. It makes it more like, I don't know how many people follow. Like, first of all, you got to think that gangsta rap, Schoolie D is the first gangsta rapper. I know people think it's others, but it's Schoolie D. Again, it's a filter that was put on something else. And so, and I know, again, I get that the non-neo soul thing, but I kind of like the fact that there was this sound built here that again, I'm gonna call it a filter every time, because I think that's just who we are, starting with, ironically, the sound of Philadelphia, right? What that approach was, right? You had what people originally thought, Motown was, and then you had sound of Philadelphia. It's just like, I don't know. And I don't know how many people listen or like watch battle rap, but if you do watch battle rap, if that is your thing and you go on YouTube,
you always know the Philly rappers from every other rapper. And the reason why is because the content, the things in which they rap about, has to do with what is going on in their community. If you watch a battle and you see a New York rapper battle a Philly rapper, the New York rapper is going to go in with the swag, my outfit and all this and whatever. But the Philly rapper is going to go in there with something really gut-wrenching and almost a little bit disrespectful, but it's true. So it might be like, but it's true. But it's the same way that we communicate with each other. I think one of the things that I'm most proud about Philly about is no matter how gentrified we make it, no matter how many transplants we make it, the attitude is still very communal and blue collar. You can go a lot of places that are gentrified and things become super, super white collar and people become a specific way. But here in Philadelphia, when people say it's not what you know, it's who you know, Philadelphia is a place where everybody is somebody to somebody. And that doesn't matter whether you are a teacher, whether you are, a waitress, whether you're a rapper, whether you're whatever. Because in Philly, we believe if my man is cool with you, if my man say you trustworthy, you trustworthy. That don't mean just because you came in here with a big suit, it don't make you somebody. But if you came in here with a big suit and you know my homie from over on 52nd Street, now, all right, we can have a conversation. And I'm sorry. And I think that the music here, the dance here, everything here is a reflection of that. And I think of Philly when I think of hip hop. I think we have a certain filter that we put on the way that we carry out these things, and I'm super proud of it.
Awesome.
Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, this all ties into the theme of what we're talking about, the message in the music, but it's also the message in the culture. I want to take a moment. I want to give audience members a chance to speak, and I didn't properly plan for that, so please forgive me. I'm going to try and make that work without disrupting all the tech that is going on here. But I want to give our youngest participant a chance to really speak, because I know you've heard a lot of us talk with you and around you and about stuff that you're not from Philly, so you might not get this, that, and such. But just give us your take on what you're absorbing from this conversation right now and how folks like yourself in your generation view us and hip hop in this space of 50 years.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah. First, I think I do understand like the Philly genre, because being on social media, like a lot of the stuff that's like the trendy stuff is actually from Philly. And I'm hearing a lot, like just a lot of stuff is originated from this place, and it making you really want to go study. Like what interview that we had yesterday, it had me researching a lot of stuff that's like really helping me with my craft. And what was the second half of the question? You said,
how do you relate to us and folks in your generation? How are you seeing hip hop, seeing us older carriers of hip hop now that it's in its 50th year and you're hearing all this like sage wisdom and all this history? How do you view us?
How do you view you guys? I think definitely not old for sure. Definitely wise. Like like age is just a number. Like it's a mentality.
Right.
Like that's how I look at it with age.
Good answer. Good answer.
But we over here like, all right, Aaliyah. All right, Aaliyah.
Come on, we listen.
For me though, I would definitely say, me personally, like when I say recycle, like a lot of the new ideas, like it's going back off of things that start like with hip hop actually started. Like, man, that's tough, man. That's tough. I would just say recycling, like just that's how we look at you guys. Like now, I wouldn't even say recycling, but like, sampling. I would say that definitely for sure. And a lot of people are sampling like the old school stuff for sure. Like that would probably be it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, no. That's
give you a super hard question, but your voice is important here in this space as well. So I wanted to make sure that.
Absolutely. No, I'm a sponge. Like I told you the other day, I'm a sponge. I'm here to just listen and learn and, go back having more information that I didn't have. So, and I'm in the perfect seat, You go be in the perfect seat. I'm next to the lady that June Black Music Month. Like this is tough. You know what I'm saying? So like this is incredible for me.
Awesome. I love it. Want to give the audience a chance to ask a question. So this is what I would like to do. Mike, don't hate me. So what I'd like to do is if you have a question for the panel, hey, our news and program director, Jamira Perry, is here. She is on it, doggone it. That's why we work like a team. So Jamira is going to go to the folks, or do you want them to come to you? All right. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Jamira is going to come to you. If you remember Phil Donahue, she's going to do the Phil Donahue with the mic and go up to you so you can ask your question. All right. Anyone have a question for the panelists? Raise your hand. All right. We got brother right here down in front. And if you have your question ready, just raise your hand. I see you in the back. Thank you, brother. I see you in the back. All right. Please state your name so we know who you are, and please ask your question.
How you doing? I'm Clyde. I'm South Philly. I'm asking. I used to DJ with Grandmaster Nell right before Dad to Death. So I'm deep in this thing. I'm deep in this thing, right? So I transformed that into roller skating. And if people know hip hop, it started in roller skating rinks, then blew up. My thing is this here is like Aaron touched on a lot of stuff, and so did you. All of y'all touched on a lot of stuff. This thing that's happening now that Aaron touched on, that it became such a worldwide phenomenon. Now you got breakdancing in the Olympics. So if anybody know anything about the Olympics are losing money the last several years. What's the way to bring your money back in? Bring breakdancing and hip hop. So it's going a lot of different ways. You can't turn on the TV or the radio without hearing hip hop anywhere. You just can't. Commercials and everything. And Philadelphia just have a rich history. And I just wanted to make a comment on that. And I just thank all of y'all, especially you, Dyana, just giving up all that information. I appreciate all of y'all and just keep hip hop alive. Oh, and there's a hip hop union. I don't know if y'all know about that.
A hip hop? I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Hip hop union.
A hip hop union. Okay.
Chuck D, African Bada, they talked about this for years, and now they're making it a career outlet. So it's basically they're in SAG and after right now. So they'll probably make a big announcement about all that at the Hip Hop Museum. I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Please raise your hand if you have comments. We have people in the back, some folks right in the front as well. Please state your name and ask your question.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So my name is Luna. I'm co-director of a nonprofit called They Will Not They Soothe. And we pay artists, hip-hop artists, rap artists, and poets to create socially responsible music and poetry, right? We want to combat the harmful narratives that we're hearing in the music. You guys kind of touched on that, allowing everyone to have their voice to speak their piece. That's so important, but it's definitely important that we as a community, come and create inspiration for the next generation. So my question really is, I'm seeing there's MCs on the stage. There's also cultural keepers on the stage. There's a variety of community members on the stage. And I want to know, what can we as a community do, to work together to transform the culture of hip hop in a way that will keep our children alive, with what we're hearing. Is it? Yeah. Let me know if I need to clarify.
No, I think that's fine. And any panelist can jump in and answer.
What we can do to work together? Work together.
Yes.
Not just say, oh, let's work together. And then we all gather, we make the date, we get in the room, and then nobody's really working together. It's called mutual aid. Ever heard of it? A lot of us do this. In Philly, what I want to say, Tiffany, Dyana, which you both know, a lot of us, many of us, I would venture to say most of us, also attach working with for the people to everything we do in our arts here. This is like just a natural thing. You're a poet, you're a musician, you're a painter, you're a photographer, you're here in Philly. And like we were talking about responsibility, like I didn't answer that question because it's a tricky question. Like, what's the responsibility? When you're an artist, what's your responsibility as a human being? Is the question. What's your responsibility as a fleshy, a creature with bones and blood and hair and all that stuff like we all got, and then walking around being all judgy and shamey all the time. So we need to learn how to work together. How do you work together? Learn how to work together and then get in the room and work together and do the work. Because I do it. Talk to me afterwards. I don't know about everybody else, but I do this.
I would like to say that she's 1,000% right because listen, that's like my big sister right there. I go to her for like literally everything. But like she said, there are a lot of artists, and I'm sure on this stage, I know for a fact on this stage, that are all community aware, community based. They're all involved in some sort of way. And it's weird too, because I think that all of us got into it naturally. I don't necessarily think that it was like, oh, you know what? I woke up today. How can I do something for the community today? I think it's just naturally in us, right? But what I will say is this as well, because I've started to learn since my recent role as the chairwoman of the Arts and Culture Task Force of Philadelphia, I've realized with nonprofits, and I'm gonna say this, but I realized with a lot of nonprofits that there's, first of all, funding here is crappy. So we're gonna keep it real. Funding here is crappy, and it's harder and harder when you want to represent genres that other people don't deem valuable, right? If you want to get a grant for classical music, you can get that. You understand what I'm saying? If you want a grant for hip hop, poetry, you might not. And so through that lens, it's very important that we come together as a community and we know each other. So a lot of what that looks like is showing up for each other and other people's events. I go to so many people's events. I know so many people just by going through this, and I'm not going there to get anything out of it. I'm going there to be community. I know so many nonprofits, people who run nonprofits, who come to me and they're looking for artists. And I think that that's great. You should be, but you should also know them. You should also be out there, doing your mission and doing your work every place that you go. You just should. And I also encourage everybody in this room to be more politically active in the city, because I know that everybody is jaded, and as you should be, right? Like I'm not saying it's not warranted. It is. But I also know that if you show up in numbers, you can make things happen. I've learned that. I got in my position by trolling, which is another hip hop thing. So thank you, hip hop. By trolling, but the best part about me trolling was I trolled city council, and they were like, "Well, this is what you say it is, but we don't really know it. So what we're gonna have you do is run a couple city council meetings so we can see whether or not what you say is correct." I hosted 3 of them. Everybody showed up. People think that there are people who think that you won't show up. They showed up, and they showed out. There were more people who came to those meetings than the rest of them. And when they did show out, they also spoke up. I don't get funding because of this. This happened, that happened. They were going off. They basically spoke for me. So when I got the opportunity to do grants and figure out where that money was going to go, because we started the Illuminate the Arts grants, I made sure that the criteria made sense for the people that I work with and know every single day. But again, we have to show up for each other. We have to continue to show up for each other. And a lot of that looks like, all right, it's a Thursday night. I might have 2 hours. Let me go check out this poetry show real quick, right? I know we have families. I know we're tired. I know all those other things, but we are a community. We should continue to support each other, socially, economically, politically. And I think that we'll have the answer to your question.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think peeping game is very helpful when people understand what they're a part of. I think the PSK comment about the gangster rap is a great example of that. Right now, a lot of the people involved in drill music think that they just are following in the footsteps of Chicago. It's almost like the Mandela effect. No matter how many times Ice-T says 6 in the morning was based on PSK, nobody's going to acknowledge it unless we tell our story. That's why I thought it was so beautiful with the whole, Music Month thing. It's not up to Kenny Gamble to say I'm Kenny Gamble, but you have people around you, they're like, yo, you that dude. And we're going to make sure the world remember that you that boy. They can talk Watch Stacks, they can talk Motown, because they be Motowning you to death, right? But it's our responsibility to make sure that we let them know. I think Jay-Z was the first person to even shout out Lucian Grainge on the record, saying Lucy don't write. People like, who is that? He owns Universal Music. But you mad at Snoop, you mad at Dre. These rappers, you don't even know who's in charge. And I think a lot of times, even when I go visit the prison, somebody says, I'm a hustler. I said, you don't even got your phone. You're not even wearing your own clothes. The person who put these windows, that's a contract, multi-million dollars. The concrete was the contract. The computerized gates, a contract. The handcuffs, the uniforms, they're all multi-million dollar contracts. Everybody's making millions but you, and you the hustler. So sometimes when you show people and you draw the lens back and you let them see where they are, like those maps and say, you are here, then they say, wow, wait a minute, I'm the product? I thought I was the poet. Oh, this is what that contract means? In perpetuity throughout the universe, I got to buy my name back? This is some Toby Kunta stuff. You say, exactly. And now with the technology the way it is, they have an option. Word to Kanye. They got a choice whether they want to be with these labels or be free. And a lot of people are so conditioned based on their lack of understanding of history and the fuller context of exploitation in the music industry that they want to get signed. Even though they need nothing, like literally like the elephant that's tied with the string and doesn't try to run away like a sheep fence, because they're so trained to not resist and to not go anywhere, that now, after all these generations, we don't even look at our own creativity as the commodity. We look at affiliating ourselves with a white corporation as a sign of making it. But if you help them to understand that you are the point of equity, you are valuable. Master P got offered $1 million and was broke and turned it down because he said, if they are willing to give me $1 million, I must be worth at least 10. And shouts out to whoever had this set up with the mics. Anybody under 6 feet, y'all feel me on that. This is what's up right here. I'm feeling colossal, like they say at the beginning of that, Mr. Carter song.
I love it. You got the face.
I was just gonna add, kind of piggybacking on for everybody, but the main thing is attending, being there, be present. That's the biggest thing. Also, I mean, I know I can speak for everybody up here, and there's more individuals than just us. Just reach out. You'd be surprised. We'll reach right back out. We might not do it right away, but we're very, you could touch us. You know what I mean? Also, for like us, like individuals like us, I think it's important to show up and just be. Like Queen Joe said, we've done that. Her and I have done that numerous times. Just attending, being in spaces so people understand and they also feel like worthy. Because I think that's another thing too. A lot of people feel like, oh, I'm not worthy to be like Queen Joe or Ursula. No, we're all the same. We're all the same. And if we could help amplify your voices, use us. My pop always told me, I remember this when I was young. I don't like to get used. So I used to work in the gallery. I think it's called the Fashion District now.
It's the gallery.
When I worked at the gallery, right? I worked at this store called IQ. Those of you guys been around early 90s. The store was like the spot to, get your Timberlands, get your fly gear, right? And I remember just every day I would just be like bothered, like, yo, I'm getting used. And my pop one time pulled me to the side. He was like, man, if you don't get used, you're useless. And to this day, that's the way I operate within this culture. I want to be useful. I don't want to be misused or abused, but I want to be as useful as possible. So, you know what I mean?
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. Jamira's in the back with another comment or question. Please state your name and then ask your question.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Yvette Young, and my question or comment is, back in the day, C. Dolores Tucker, in my opinion, was almost prophetic in how she spoke about the misogyny and the messages of misogyny and the visual messages of misogyny in the music. And I think after she died, that kind of the message went away. And now it's almost a self-deprecating message from women ourselves of lacking value in our bodies and not pushing intelligence, but kind of even saying, yeah, I'm going to use my body. And we have a right to do that. But also back in the day, I think there was a separation where certain magazines were behind the counter and certain albums were R-rated and weren't sold to children. But now with the phone, all of our children, whether you like it or not, they have access. Even if your child doesn't have a phone, their friend does. So monitoring that for our babies who are singing the WAP song, what do we do about that? Because freedom of speech, it's a good thing, but at the same time, we have to think about the next generation and what we are feeding them, because you are what you eat, and we are feeding them a message of destruction.
Well, every generation has had, every generation. I remember just recently watching the brilliant Little Richard documentary produced and directed by Lisa Cortez. And when Little Richard came out, people were clutching their pearls. Okay, they just didn't know what to make out of a Black queer man wearing lipstick and mascara and singing a whole new hybrid of music that he created along with Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry called rock. The same time Sister Rosetta Tharpe was coming out of the church, electrifying the guitar. So there were people who were like, it's scandalous. We have to teach our children to be discerning, because there is a segment of the population that likes that, what you were talking about and what C. Dolores Tucker was talking about. And you know what? I want to live in a society where there is freedom of expression and choice. And that's what supposedly America has been built on. I've traveled around the world. I haven't been everywhere, but I will say this much. With all of the ills and ails of America and its racist principles that are permeated in every strata of our culture, I still love being an American, and I want the freedom of choice, and I want other people to have the freedom of choice. When I hear Megan Thee Stallion talk about her body and her self-agency over her body and what she does with it, I respect that. Now, that's not necessarily what I do or what I want to do. I can't twerk. I mean, I think if I could, I would, if I could. But I mean, I just can't. I've tried. I'm not a failure. Okay.
DeeJay. Oh, no, it's all right.
But I want to have the freedom to twerk if that's what I want to do. And so I do believe that we need to just teach our children. I have a friend who bought his son a flip phone. His son does not have access to all the apps, the internet. He has a old school flip phone. So parents, it's our responsibility. Guardians, it is our responsibility to teach our children what we think is right and wrong, and then for our children prayerfully to have, assimilated these good lessons of love that are taught and go forth. Now, that's not ideal in every family situation, because in some families, kids are allowed to make their own decisions at ages where they don't have the comprehension, the maturity to get what they are receiving. But at the end of the day, I'm still for freedom of choice and expressions.
Can I add on to that? Yeah. I want to add on to that. Obviously, I'm a rapper, so there's that. I want to make 2 points. One, I think that I agree with everything she just said. Obviously, I mean, at this point, you just can't. You don't. I agree with everything she just said. But I also want to say that if you do hear a song that is sexually vulgar, I think that is a great starting point to have a conversation with your child. Also, I want everyone to acknowledge that 2023 is the kids growing up now they have access to things, but also they're being bullied by things. I think it's very important to talk to girls about having agency over their own bodies, because now we're in an age where people make little slip-ups and you have, young Black girls trying to commit suicide because somebody sexually exposed them on TikTok. And the thing is, prior to that, if everybody keeps doing this very interesting thing where we're placing a certain level of respectability politics on kids. Once they find themselves in these situations, it makes it seem like they can't redeem themselves, or like their value has been taken away in some sort of way. We can't keep putting this emphasis on young women's sexuality about this is who you're supposed to be and this is all these other things if we don't have a full conversation, because somebody else will come in and say certain things, and now all of a sudden they feel like their self-worth is gone. So while it is sexually vulgar, right, I also commend the fact that there are women taking ownership of their bodies. There are women that are just like, okay, you can call me a hoe all you want to, but it's not going to affect my ability to make money. It's not going to affect my ability to find a partner. It's not going to affect my ability to do X, Y, and Z. And granted, there's obviously nuance to every conversation. I'm just saying to say that I'm glad that those songs happen because they force parents to have conversations that they wouldn't necessarily have. My mother came from the generation where children are to be seen, not heard. She would never have a sex conversation with her, my mother, with her mother. Whereas now I'm along, right? And with each generation, it becomes different, where my mom was like, okay, let me tell you about this and let me tell you about that, because I don't want you to fall into the traps of what could happen to you along those lines. And I just hope that if you are around your child and they are listening to something sexually explicit, that you feel comfortable enough having those conversations. Because if you don't, like she said, the streets, the internet, somebody else is going to teach them something that you might not want them to be taught.
All right. Thank you, Clean Joe. I know I have one space for one more. It's going to have to be quick because we are at time. So we have one more comment or question from the audience. Please state your name first.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyrone from North Philadelphia. And I just want to say to Miss D, thank you for being one of the true individuals who have done many things in terms of helping folks know what music is, not only in Philadelphia, but across the world. And I want to thank you for that. But my question is, Tupac and Biggie, when those two brothers were killed, did it take away something in terms of taking a voice or taking a quote from the young people at that time? Because for me, I really think that those two brothers had a message for our young people, and taking their lives kind of took away some, I would say, some real tragedy that maybe our young folk are being a better consideration with the all okay. Do you think I'm correct with that?
Thank you for your question, Tyrone. Can we just have one member of the panel respond?
I was going to respond. I don't want to get all hype.
Be yourself, sir.
Oh, okay. You say we're recording this, though. I try to keep the job. And I'm good for getting in trouble. But I think it's important to note that that is the point. That's the goal. There's a book that recently came out called King of Life, right? One of the first documentaries on Dr. Martin Luther King in decades. And one of the things that the book reveals, based on a lot of the declassified information that wasn't declassified at the time of the previous biographies, was that J. Edgar Hoover and Johnson were in concert, not only with the Kennedys in terms of bugging Dr. King, but there was this sick obsession with Dr. King where people were trying to think that Johnson was somehow his friend. But these new documents revealed that they were all in collusion doing this prevention of this Black Messiah that you saw in the previous COINTELPRO documentation. And when I looked at even James Baldwin's FBI file, you don't have to be aggressive and militant. They said that Dr. King could have been that Black Messiah, but he was too ingrained in the establishment. They said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad could have been that leader, but he was too old. They said Stokely Carmichael had the charisma and the potential, so luckily he got out the country when he did. But the point is, they're looking at you based on your potential, whether you realize it or not. Somebody say Meek Mill. They're looking at your potential, whether you are recognizing it or actualizing it or not. And yet they see that when they cut that head off, they know that they go another 25 years with peace. Right? Some of the buildings were still burnt out in Watson, in Newark, and in Philly, in the 80s that suffered the riots in 68. So this is a playbook that they've mastered at this point. So they are mastering the ability to, at this point, not only make martyrs, but just to commodify. So now they just bring you in and they water you down and they manipulate you and they have you beholden to such an extent that you can't become militant. But I think people need to really understand that 20 and 30 years from now, we're going to hear so much about the way that Biggie was being tailed the whole time, right? Donnie Brasco, the night of the Quad Studio shooting, that they have documentation that Pac was being followed, right? When they asked about the Audubon Ballroom, Malcolm X's assassination, they asked the police chief, was there any officers in the Audubon? And his response was, there was no uniformed officers in the Audubon Ballroom. So we know right now that there are rappers that are agents. We know that a lot of these so-called people that are, turning in these RICO cases are actively agent provocateurs. That means they're the ones that say, go do it, and then they're the ones that testify. In the situation with the Panther 21, before they found out about Eugene Roberts, right? He had already set up Afeni Shakur in the Panther 21, and Afeni Shakur, that should still be a movie, right? Became her own counsel and not only defended her, but her other 20 comrades, and they still making silly movies about Django and everything else. They need movies on things that really happen for people to understand these things. But in that trial, when the agent provocateur took the stand, they realized, oh, that's the one that set up Malcolm. So they had people, they were recycling people. Set this group up. Oh, you did a good job. You get a raise. Now set that group up. So some people are getting vouched for, like we do, like Sister said in Philly. They say, oh, you was with Malcolm and them, you good. So now you got these agents that are ingratiating themselves into certain communities, into certain gangs and gang culture and drill rap. And like, if you don't understand, the Panther said that 1 in every 5 at the end was an agent. They knew that. They get in the room, some of y'all saw that in the Black Messiah movie. You get in the room with 5 people, 1 of y'all telling. The Mississippi Sovereignty Commission, I'll leave you with that. Study the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission. That is the FBI's wing that they use as a spy agency. That means they were utilizing black people to spy on black people and destroy the civil rights movement. They had ministers that were preaching, taking people's money, having meetings in their churches, and recording everybody's license plate and reporting it to the FBI when they left. And if you don't understand the nuance, you start saying silly things like, black people need to get together. Not all of us.
And I think that is a great place to conclude our conversation. Can we please give it up for our panel tonight? Queen Joe, thank you so much. Ursula Rucker, Dyana Williams, Tame Ars, Dr. Aaron Smith, and Tylan. Thank you all so much for joining us.